Guys, I am back from another video and today we're talking about what if Deku was an Oni. So in the last video we talked about how, as everybody came back to school, they were told by Aizawa that they're going to be having a training camp very soon. As they were told to basically get ready and maybe get supplies like sleeping bags, tents and other things like that. So, Mita would basically ask everybody if they want to go to a certain, mall. As when they do, well, Izuku was separated with everybody else, as Izuku would start moving to go get all of his stuff, as he would get captured by Handyman, otherwise known as Shigaraki. So, Shigaraki, just like in the anime, would ask him how is Stain super popular, unlike him and like the rest of the League of Villains. As you would tell him, it's because of his, motive for basically trying becoming a villain. Because, Stain had his motive, because he wants to kill fake heroes, and as for him, he does not. So, after basically telling him that, he would basically leave, and Ochako would arrive to maybe ask him for some money to, I don't know, maybe basically ask him to maybe buy her some mochi. So when she, does, well, Izuku would give her some of his money to basically buy mochi, as they're basically just talking. After a while of talking, when the, rest of their, classmates basically arrived, two of them specifically being, Kineko and Ibara started becoming a little bit jealous. And even, trying to do the death glare on her. So, yeah. So, after that day, they would basically go to sleep. Or in this case, just go to sleep and also think that, if Ochako dares to try and touch our man, specifically both, Kineko and, Ibara, like, they would just say in their minds, if she dares to try and touch our man, we're literally going to tear her apart limb from limb. We're not even kidding. So, yeah. So, that is basically what happened last episode. And so, yeah. So, let's talk about what happens next. So, everybody's woken up pretty early because of the whole, training camp thing. As everybody's basically woken up pretty early, they were told by Aizawa to go outside to prepare to go into the bus. So, after arriving outside, they would see the bus, as the bus was surprisingly not really resembling a bus. It's more like one of those tanks that you use for I don't know, for, escorting prisoners or something like that. As they would think, what the? That's definitely not a normal bus. As Izuku would basically say this. So, Aizawa, why does our bus look like a literal, prison bus or something like that? As he would say this. Well, after the little incident in the UA Sports Festival, well, apparently one of them specifically, the principal, decided to make this instead. Apparently it's supposed to keep all of you safe. Whatever. Anyway, go inside. So, as everybody got inside the, bus, as some of them would basically fall asleep because, some of them were just late at night, basically just I don't know, maybe playing video games or something like that. So, and as for Izuku, he would basically fall asleep as well, basically waiting out until they basically arrived at the, training camp. So, Aizawa would basically tell the bus driver to start moving, as they would basically get out of the, UA campus as they started going towards the training camp. So, wait for a second. He would basically fall asleep as after a few hours of basically going through the forest, as they were told to wake up by Aizawa. Aizawa would say, "Oi, brats, it's time to wake up." As everybody would wake up, as they would see that they're currently in a cliff edge. As everybody would come out of the bus, as the bus driver would basically go away, or drive away or whatever. Everybody would be dropped off at this area as everybody's looking around, seeing the large, view of the forest. As one of them would say this, being, Bakugo. Why are we even here? Besides, as he would start looking around, as he would scream out, why are we not in the goddamn training camp already? When everybody heard that, well, Aizawa would say this. Well, because it's a test. As would basically just move away as several figures would basically come out of the forest. One of them would put his hand on onto the floor as the floor would basically crumble away as everybody was basically falling down to their doom. Izuku would think fast as he would grab both, Ibara and, wait for a second, and Kinoko as he would grab his sword, specifically his katana, as he would stab it into onto the remaining wall, basically acting as like a break. As when he does, everybody would basically start falling down, but not die. I mean, some of them are injured, but still not dead. So, wait for a second. As everybody's basically falling down, Izuku, Kinoko, and Ibara are basically safe. As Kinoko would say this, a bit too close, a bit too close, a bit too close. As Ibara's basically just content basically in this position. As she's saying to herself, feels nice. So, Izuku would say this to Ibara. Ibara, can you use your hair to... As she would say this. Oh, yeah. Yeah. What do you want? As he would say this. Can you use your hair as like a break? Or should I say as like a... Wait for a second. To use her hair as like a wave to get down safely. As she would say this. Oh, yeah, I could. So, she would start, using her hair as like, similarly to like Dr. Octopus with his, tentacles. Not in that way. Not in that way. I mean, as in the climbing down way. So, as everybody is basically just like safe, like, except for some of them, like for example Bakugo, which his legs are not, not in a good position. They're broken in many places, like pretty broken, but not as like broken as like Ida, which Ida is still injured, but pretty much badly now thanks to the fall. So Izuku, Kiniko, and also Ibara basically come down pretty easily, as Izuku would say this to everybody. So, are any of you okay? Has everybody that, didn't just fall down to their literal doom, like, for example, Ochako, because remember, she has like a gravity quirk. And maybe, yeah, maybe Momo, because I just imagine her just like creating a parachute at that point, saving some others, like for example, maybe like Todoroki. So, some of them would say this. You really think that we're okay right now? I mean, my legs are basically broken. As he starts pointing to his legs, as Izuku would say this. I guess so. Hey, as you would start looking at, Momo, as Momo would say this. What is it, Izuku-san? As he would say this. Maybe try and make wheelchairs? As she would say this. Oh, for our injured classmates? As he would say this. Yeah. So, after she made some, wheelchairs and probably like some, like some slings for some people's arms or something like that. Wait for a second. So, a sling or some slings, just basically for some people's arms, or even like bandages. Everybody would start moving on to go through that forest. As Izuku would think in his mind, I think that wait for a second, god fuck. I think the training camp is through that forest. As one of them would say this, being, Ida. So, where are we supposed to go? As Izuku would say this. Maybe that, maybe the training camp is through that forest. Or at least I think so. As one of them would basically say this, being, Kaminari. Yeah, maybe, but still, we're basically in the middle of the forest. What if we, get lost or something? As one of them would say this, being, Momo. As Momo would say this, maybe I can make a drone to maybe help us. So, she would start making a drone and surprisingly makes a program to basically control the drone fast as lightning for some reason. Let's just ignore that part. So, she would make the drone as she would basically just like use it to its full advantage, basically using it as like a scout. As when she does, she would see that, well, there's literal monsters basically roaming around the place, as she would say this. Um, guys, are you perhaps, you know, do you believe in monsters or something like that? As Izuku would say this. Believing in monsters? Tch, what a joke. I mean, if there are monsters in this world, why wouldn't they, capture them or probably like something like that? As she would say this, well, as she would basically just like show everybody the footage that she's getting from, the drone, as Izuku would basically say this. The hell are those? As she would say this, I don't know, but they're definitely there, and as the drone would basically be destroyed by the mouth of some sort of mud monster. As they would see in front of them that something flew down. And it's a freaking mud dragon. I'm not even kidding. A literal like monster that's literally made out of like rocks or something like that, or mud or whatever. As everybody would say this. What the hell are we supposed to do? As Izuku would say this. Scatter! As everybody would start, start running away in different directions. As Izuku is basically running away with, Kinako and also Ibara. Ibara is basically acting as like, somewhat of the vehicle because, her hair is basically large enough to basically carry all of them. So yeah, that would make sense. So, after a while basically going through the forest, basically escaping some monsters, including um, the large like dragon over there, they would make it to the training camp in somewhat one piece. And thankfully, they're actually the first ones there. As one of them specifically, Aizawa would say this. So you finally arrived. So how about the others? As Izuku would say this. I don't know, but what the heck were those? Those are literal monsters. As he would say this. Well, it's courtesy to these guys. As they would see people wearing, cat costumes. Or more specifically, like feline costumes, because, tigers, things like that. Yeah. As one of them would say this. We are, as they would do a stupid ass pose, as they would say this. The Wild Wild Pussycats. As Izuku would say this. Are you sure that we're in the right training camp? As Aizawa would say this. No, you're right. This is the training camp, and unfortunately, these are the owners. As one of them would say this, being a girl with blonde hair and seems to be wearing some sort of like red dress. As she would say this, oh, don't be so mean. Wait for a second. You don't have to be so mean, Aizawa-san. As he would say this. Likewise. As, well, Aizawa would tell all three of them to basically go train. As all three of them would start to train. For Izuku, he would start training in his, swordsmanship and also with his kanabo, which, thanks to the help of, Tiger, aka one of the Wild Wild Pussycats, he would start training with them to basically try and work it out, even though Tiger doesn't really know how to use the sword, so yeah, that is basically just awkward at the time. So unfortunately, Izuku doesn't really get any advantage doing his training thanks to that. But he somehow, gets through that by basically learning a brand new technique, being that he's able to run even more faster than usual. Being that he's, half Oni, he can probably just like go as fast as like fucking lightning or something like that. So, yeah, let's just say he's becoming a little bit more stronger and faster. And as for Kiniko, Kiniko would basically start, making her making her like mushrooms basically bigger and stronger and make more spores with them. And as for, Ibara, she would start working on her, large fucking hair to basically act as like, shields, many other things like that, and basically started training with them a lot more. And as for the rest of the, students that basically arrived at the training camp, well, let's just say they're battered, tired, sweating, and probably even, angry at Aizawa. So, yeah. So, as everybody basically arrived, except for, Izuku, Ibara, and Kinako, because obviously they got here first, well, everybody would see that Kinako, Izuku, and Ibara are currently making dinner, as they would look over as they would see the rest of their classmates. As Izuku would say this, oh, hi guys, so are you okay? As, a certain, girl by the name of Momo would say this, no, we're not okay. we're tired. Uh, uh, she's absolutely freaking tired. Like, they can literally see it in her face. As Bakugo would say this, "The hell was that bullshit?" As he would basically start charging towards Izuku to basically, try and fight him. As he would basically get captured by Aizawa, as Aizawa would say this. Anyway, all of you guys, go start, preparing dinner. And as for you, Bakugo, you're gonna be staying over there as a punishment. As he would basically start yelling, like saying profanities and things like that, as, Bakugo would be dragged off. So, and as for the rest of the students, they would start, changing their clothes because all of their clothes are basically sweaty at the time, as they would make it to, to their little, like, what do you actually call it? They would make it to dinner, as everybody is basically just like sitting down, as they would see that the food actually looks pretty delicious. Seeing like, traditional Japanese food, as one of them specifically, Ochako would be excited to eat this. As Izuku would say this, so let's eat then. As they would say, Ikidakimasu. As they would start eating. As one of them would say this, it's absolutely good. As he would start like chowing down even more, as well, Kirishima would say this, yeah, it's absolutely amazing, so who actually made this? As Kineko and Ibara would basically start pointing at Izuku. As one of them would say this, being Momo. Huh, I didn't know that you're the cooking type. As Izuku would say this, well, I sort of have a knack for it. I also kind of learned a little bit of cooking thanks to, mom. As one of them would say this, being, wait for a sec. As Mina would say this, yeah, you're absolutely good, like, you're absolutely good at cooking. I mean, I can definitely see you as a house husband. I might even feel a bit jealous at the, I might even feel a bit jealous at the girl that might get you. As two of them specifically, Kineko and, Ibara would start glaring at her as, Mina would say this. What are you looking at me, guys? As, well, they're basically glaring at her with the intent to kill, but they would restrain it as one of them would say this, being, Ibara. Well, I think it's a bit much saying that. As she would say this. Really? Huh, I guess so. As, a certain, double haired, not really double haired, I meant double colored haired boy, aka, Shoto, would say this. So, Izuku, are you perhaps interested in anybody right now? As he would say this. What do you mean? As he would say this. Well, it seems that the two girls over there being your sister, or at least your not really half sister, I meant your adopted sister, and Ibara seem to be quite interested in you. As he would say this. Interested? What do you mean by that? As he would start, getting a little bit mad, as he would say to himself. He's seriously dense. As the rest of the students are still like talking, basically having fun, eating, as after eating, they would start going to the hot springs. Because after hearing about the hot springs, well, they're basically excited to go there. Izuku wanted to rest up because, after that, literally running from that thing, aka the, mud dragon, they would basically want to have some, some mean time. So, Izuku would decide to go to the, hot springs as he would lay down onto the water as he would say to himself, ah, feels nice. Thanks to the water basically just like heating up his body, it's basically like healing some of his, damaged muscles after that run, and also some of the training. As the rest of the boys basically arrive, except for Bakugo because he's currently being punished. For basically trying to attack Izuku, the rest of the, boys would come in as they would say this. Hey, Izuku, is the water good? As Izuku would say this. It's pretty nice. As everybody would think, huh, he seems quite relaxed. As everybody would start going into the, hot springs as they started relaxing. As a certain purple-haired boy is basically looking at the wall. or more specifically, the wall of the hot springs, as you would say to himself, so, that's paradise behind that door, or that wall, or whatever. I should. Yes, I should. As he would basically start grabbing his, like, grape hair over there. As he would basically start grabbing his, like, balls. Not those balls, I mean, the sticky balls that he had on his head. As he would start climbing up towards, um, up towards the, top of the wall to basically watch on, the girls. As when Izuku saw this, he would basically grab his sword, which somehow he brought into the hot springs, don't even ask how he got it, as he would basically just like throw it at him at fully blank range, almost cutting his face off. As when he saw it, he would basically get scared and fall off. As the rest of his, sticky balls would basically fall off as well, as he would get stuck onto the, floor of the, bathhouse. Oh boy, the hot springs are definitely going to be an interesting memory to revisit. So, yeah. After the hot springs, Izuku and the rest of the guys basically go on their merry way to go to sleep. Izuku would grab his sword after that little, interaction with Mineta, which Mineta is currently scared right now and being punished by, Aizawa on, for almost trying to peep on the girls. So, Izuku would come out of the, hot springs basically just wearing, bathrobes, I guess you can say, as he would basically go to his, wait for a second. I don't really know what to call it. I'm just gonna call it like, the place where you put all of your clothes in for, for the bathhouse or the hot springs. As when he's going into it, he would realize that his underwear is a bit different. He would remember that clearly, he would remember clearly that he originally had boxers, not briefs. As he would say to himself, what happened to my boxers? As he would start to think and remember that, nobody ever, took his underwear. As he would say this, I guess I'll check it next time. After he gets his, somehow appeared, briefs, as he would start wearing his, new clothing, as he would start going to his bed to fall asleep. So let's go to maybe like a few hours before he basically came out of the, hot springs, shall we? Because this is going to be interesting to say the least. So, a few minutes ago, apparently, Ibarra was a bit, much, let's just say that. So, she was basically like going to the hot springs to basically go and rest up, as she would see the entrance to the boys, hot springs, as she would say to herself, this is my chance. So she would start using her hair to basically just like look around and trying to get, Izuku's boxers. So we can, have a bit of fun with it, let's just say that. So, she would basically just like go around, basically just like looking and not really looking because, her hair, as she would basically feel or at least somehow sense that the actual, thing that she's touching is actually Izuku's boxers. Don't even ask how she knows that. So, after she does, she would say to herself, ah, there you go. She would basically put it in her, what do you actually call it? Her bathrobe's like pocket, as she would start to go to the, to their, little like hot springs or the girls' hot springs, as she would be resting with, Kineko and the rest of the girls. As some of the girls are basically asking like some, fun questions as it goes towards, both Ibarra and Kineko, as one of them would say this, being Ochako. So, girls, or more specifically you and, Kineko, as Ibarra would say this, why do you ask, Ochako? As Ochako would say this, well, it seems that you're, seem to have a bit of a relationship with both, you're, with both, Kineko and, Izuku. As she would say this, well, we've been friends since, 10 years old, or at least I think so. As, wait for a second, as Kiniko would say this, yeah, I mean, he's my adopted brother after all, so, as one of them would say this, being, Mina, yeah, as Mina would say this, but during the time in our, in the mall, it seems that both of you seem to be a bit jealous at Ochako basically hogging Izuku. Isn't that right? As Kiniko would say this, I mean, yeah, I mean, he's my brother, and I don't want her, or at least him, to basically get heartbroken or something like that. She would basically start to, like, stutter, as she would say this, being, Ibarra. Oh, yes, I remember that clearly. As her hair is basically just like, um, that typical, like, trope where the, girls basically almost like speaking in this almost calm tone, but her hair and demeanor definitely don't look like that. It's like her hair is basically just like floating up the surface of the water and basically acting like fucking tentacles. Just imagine that. As all of the girls would basically just like think in their minds, I think we found an actual yandere, girls. As, well, Kineko would say this. Well, the reason why we actually did it, well, as they would both sigh, as all two, like both of them would say this. Well, we're kind of in love with him. As all of the girls would say this. I fucking knew it. As one of them would say this, being, Ochako. So, you actually like Izuku? Even though you're technically, like, brother and sister? Not really technically, as in blood related, but still. As Kiriko would say this. Well, yeah, and because of that, well, I sort of gotten a little bit jealous because of you being with him. As, well, Ibarra would say this. Well, yes, he did protect me that one time from those bastards. She would basically remember one time that during their, elementary school, that there was this boy that basically was, like, trying to get her away from him. As one time, he was a bit, a bit much and tried to, um, um, let's just say, like, try and, have a bit of fun with her. As when Izuku arrived, he would basically protect her and basically told that boy to never try and do anything with her ever again. As he would basically run away, and Kineko sort of had this, crush because of it. After telling that little story, well, let's just say all of the girls would think in their minds, well, that definitely sounds like some sort of like rom-com type of story or whatever. As, well, all of the girls say this. Be it, or more specifically, like one of the girls, like specifically, what's her face? One of them specifically, Momo, would say this. I think I'm quite tired, girls, so I should be going to sleep now. She would basically leave the hot springs as they would hear a thud. As all of the girls would say, did something happen? As well, Kineko would say this. I think it came from the boys' side. As all of the girls would start thinking, I wonder what they're doing. As, well, all of the girls would basically just like start to leave. As Kineko would basically grab her, her, like, wait for a second, her bathrobe, including the, stolen boxers of Izuku, as she would basically grab, like, a spare pair of, like, briefs and basically put it in, like, where, Izuku's, like, boxers used to be. As she would say to herself, now this will be fun. As she would start, caressing the boxers in her, pocket, as she would basically go to her tent, as she would basically fall asleep, holding the boxers up to her face. Yeah, let's just say Kineko, if she were to know this, oh boy, she's definitely gonna have a field day with that. And as for Izuku, now wearing these, briefs, he would basically fall asleep, even though these briefs are kind of itchy to him. As he would say to himself, alright, who the hell stole my underwear? And if I find them, I'm gonna murder them. So, yeah. After that day, everybody basically falls to sleep. So, this is going to be the end of this episode. And so, I hope you liked the video, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye!